Hello and welcome. Once again, it's a beautiful day. I've been just sitting, it's late morning. I've been after my meal and clearing up. I've been sitting on the veranda where you see me when you don't see me sitting here, when the camera is the other way around. Just going through emails I've received and comments. And I reserve a little part of my day, probably no more than an hour, if that, to do that, and then restrict all other communications during the rest of my day. I have no notifications, and I don't look at the device on which they come, the smartphone which I use for that. So it's very much a case of compartmentalizing that correspondence part of my day to more or less the same time each and every day. And this brings about routine, but also keeps the rest of my practice in solitude, not infiltrated by thoughts, questions coming from outside or from within, and without those distractions that social media for many can bring about continually, with bells ringing, sounds going off, notifications of this and that and the other. And I fully understand in ordinary life, in lay life, for both business, family and social purposes, one may need to keep in touch. But for monastics, that is not the case. We don't need to be in touch with the outside world. We are here exclusively for that practice alone. So I enjoy that very much, sitting on the veranda there. It is then I have my cup of coffee, enjoy reading your comments. I don't reply, I reply to each and every one of them directly, there and then, but usually just to say that I will answer that now, here, whilst talking to you on this platform. Emails I do respond to directly and personally and confidentially, and those I'm always very happy to receive and to reply to also. I've had very enjoyable experience of having quite a few visitors recently. So I say quite a few. Last week I had a couple. They were coming from the Netherlands somewhere, Holland I think. And this week I've had some quite regular now, at least once a year, visitors whom are originally from Sri Lanka, who came to visit me, coming all the way from Detroit in the US of A. And that is always very exciting to, I get excited even as a monk, to have visitors coming all the way here from foreign lands. They're here on their visiting family or on their holidays, but taking the time as they're passing by to drop in and see me, have a chat, a talk, really about Dharma, about where we are and Buddhism in general. But it's a very pleasant interaction. So that's another additional bonus that is coming about as a result of this exposure here. And if you want to do that, you can do that. I can be found on Google Maps, and the details are all there in the channel description page, other than a specific address, but you can find me, as I say, through Google Maps, and people can do that and do so. And you can, and they will testify, those visitors, as to what a peaceful, tranquil, calm and delightful place that it is that I'm so fortunate enough to have been offered to stay at for such a long time, and hopefully will continue to do so, in order to further and enable my practice in the Dharma, my practice of keeping precepts of meditation and developing wholesome mind states, reducing unwholesome mind states. So on that, moving on to the first comment, a nice short comment. Maybe the answer won't be so short, but if one has no desire to live, so suffering is gone, right? Question mark. No, that would not be the case. Desire, the eradication of desire, is one way of looking at freedom from suffering. But it's more complex than that, because we have, in Buddhism, desire split into two categories. Desire that is like thirst or craving, we call tanha, and desire that is like the desire to do good, to be generous, to be kind, or the desire to keep upheld the precepts, or the desire to practice meditation, in the Pali language, which is called chanda. So the desire not to live, or to have no desire to live, is to have no consideration for the gift we've been given of life. When I say gift we've been given, I use that term loosely. We have, as a result of causes and consequences we have put in place, causes and conditions we have put in place, the consequences of those are rebirth into this human realm, which is of a very beneficial nature. It is the only realm in which we can live here, listen to the Dharma, live the Dharma, practice the Dharma, and experience its fruits, which can be liberation from suffering in this lifetime and freedom from suffering, and no further rebirth. It is that one golden opportunity we have to practice within this Buddhist sasana and develop those qualities to attain to freedom from suffering in this lifetime and no future rebirth. So it isn't just all desire gone and suffering is gone. That is a nihilistic view. So, we might as well just sleep for the rest of the day, then we won't be suffering. Or we might as well end our lives and we won't be suffering. This will only result in rebirth, not in necessarily as good a realm as you are in now, where you have the opportunity, and why in the Noble Eightfold Path we have right effort as a very important factor, step on the path, right effort to be put into maintaining sila, to practicing meditation, and to developing wisdom. It requires a lot of effort. So to have no will to live, no desire to live, would make you laid back, lazy, and unproductive during this lifetime towards towards the eradication of the root causes of desire. So that desire that we are ending is only summing up, in that context, the root causes we call kilesas in Pali, which are greed, hatred, delusion, lobha, dosa, moha in the Pali language. So it isn't quite as simple as you put in your nice short comment, but you might have the right understanding, but just beware, it is thirst and craving we want to get rid of, not wholesome desire. Can you try to do a live where people can ask you questions? It won't affect your solitude, and there can be a direct conversation. So I have thought about that very briefly in the past. It isn't actually that practical for me to do that, because one can't be, at this point of the day, so reliable that, or one can't, hang on, how do I put this? The internet isn't necessarily so good. In the very first point in the morning, the 6 a.m. puja, it's very early in the morning. The internet's usually fairly consistent then. Around this part of the day, approaching many people's lunch times and breaks from work, the internet's not so good. But that's to some extent just an excuse, because I'm sure one could improve upon certain things. But I've never really seen or found that that kind of interactive conversation gets very far, because it's rather unmoderated. The beauty of this way of dealing with comments and questions is that, you don't get to ask, I may give you an answer and you may disagree with the answer. You don't get the immediate opportunity to then question that answer, but you do get the opportunity to think about it and then either write to me by email or comment again. If you reply by way of the threads in the comments, I don't look at it, because that would be taking it too far. And that is like, in written format, the nature of the way a Zoom conversation goes with many people. If you look at these videos online already with monks doing that, they're very long, and there are lots of conversations, and they're revolving around very limited subject matter, because each and every person is going to perhaps to some extent repeat what the previous people have asked and the same questions that are being asked. And after each and every person's gone through, hello, how are you, I'm okay, where are you from, blah, 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 it makes for rather much of a chit-chat thing, rather than answering facts with, or answering questions with facts, and then giving you the opportunity to ask again if that doesn't satisfy your inquiry. So I'm not making excuses. I just don't think it's a good format for this. It's between yourselves, maybe discussion, debate, conversation. I think it can very quickly fall into, without discipline. It's hard for me to discipline my own answers, as you can see with me going on and on with this one. When everybody's talking, even with the constraints of muting and unmuting, or however it works that I've heard, you still have a lot of talking that's perhaps not entertainment for everyone. Now, this isn't supposed to be entertainment, but we want to make the most of this short amount of time that I'm giving you and you're giving me. It's only 40 minutes to an hour maximum, usually, and that's as long as it takes in my day. But it covers a lot of comments. I get through all of your comments. They are all answered. It would never happen like that if each of you were to ask those comments live. There would be too much conversation either side and digression. I hope that's satisfactory. Maybe one day, but for the time being, whilst I'm here, it would mean I wouldn't be able to do this as well, so not as many comments would be answered, but it would, I think, give me a feeling not so much. It would intrude in my solitude, differently to people even coming to visit, because people coming to visit, they're coming a long way, they have transport to get here, and they know that they're heading off somewhere afterwards. With ongoing conversations on a daily basis on Zoom, with the faces there, and I don't have the equipment either. That's the other thing. I wouldn't see your faces, you'd see mine. Not that it probably matters, but I don't know how I'd hear you either, actually. So I don't think it's possible in that respect. But with that on a daily basis, it will become overly familiar for my liking. As much as I love you all, I don't want you to be the same as you might consider your friends at the gym to be, or the friends you meet at work or in the bar to be. We have a slightly different relationship where you only ask and talk to me about the Dharma and I only reply with such, which I know are very disciplined environments online and on Zoom for some monks who have the support, administrative support, and other people around to organise it and help with that. But I'm alone here with some very simple and basic and inexpensive equipment. Right, I never knew an ordained monk could wear a beard. How common is that? Well, I didn't say that they can have a beard. The specific Vinaya rule is that you must not allow your hairs on your head from the neck up to grow longer than 2 fingers breadth. So yes, that would be considered a beard, but it would be most inappropriate for a monk to go around like this, unless he's just come back from Tudong or Dutanga practice. That means he's been walking a long way across the whole of Sri Lanka, for instance, on a kind of pilgrimage. Then it's acceptable. He may not have had access to washing facilities. But we are, usually it's recommended that we at the very least shave our heads the day before each full moon and new moon, so the Uposita days, so every 14 days. And most often monks will shave their faces, perhaps more often than that also. It is out of respect for people you're seeing. It's just because it's perhaps looking a little uncaring, unkempt, untidy if you don't either have a full beard or or no beard, if you know what I mean. That halfway between designer stubble look isn't perhaps, although it's not against the Vinaya, the rules, it is, unless it's out of necessity. Sometimes I look a bit like that, dishevelled, if I've been travelling or something. But it's not necessary always. So no beards or hairstyles of any kind is the idea. Okay. Sometimes. So they're describing there, the pause there as I was reading the preamble, describing their, sounds like very diligent practice, meditating in the morning and in the evening or at night before sleep, at least an hour. And they're finding it very difficult to come back to the breath, and meditating can bring a lot of emotional and physical discomfort. But some time it is wonderful and comes very easily. My question is, when it comes to meditation, can I push myself too hard? Is it more important to stay consistent or better to back off when necessary? So, yeah, sometimes you can sit in meditation and it's just wonderful and enjoyable. Other times it can be very uncomfortable and difficult if you haven't been practicing for very long. But it should be that progressively, as you practice, the enjoyable side becomes more and more, and the unenjoyable less and less, until every time you sit, it's a wonderful opportunity to just experience a wonderful feeling of relief and peace and calm, both physically and mentally. You mentioned that it's really difficult to come back to the breath. And I was also picked up on this, that I often say, just do nothing, come back to the breath, or watch the breath. And when your mind wanders off, don't worry about it. Eventually just come back to the breath. And I make it sound quite easy. Probably because from my own experience and for the amount of time I'm able to meditate, and the lack of other distractions in my surrounding environment and the life I live, it is relatively easy for me to just focus on a meditation object. And in fact, I don't really even need to focus so much on a meditation object to be able to sit and enjoy very pleasant meditations. But in the outside world, and when you're developing your meditation practice, you're developing sama samadhi, right samadhi. And let's say samadhi can get considered as three things really. Samadhi as in concentration, samadhi as in contemplation, thinking about stuff, and samadhi as in meditation. It is meditation, which is not either hard focused concentration where you're trying too hard to focus on the breath, neither is it just letting your mind wander or even thinking, contemplating on a subject matter. It is what it is trying to be, attain to, jhana, at first single-pointed focus, which then allows the mind, the thinking brain, to let go of thinking, to just be at peace, calm and tranquility. And trying, yes, too hard will prevent it from doing that, because you're getting something in the way of allowing it to relax. The effort is not sama, it is not right effort. It is pushing your mind against what it wants to do. So allow thoughts to come up, if necessary note them, but what we must remember is, like when you go to the gym to exercise your body's muscles, at first it's very difficult, but with time those muscles get stronger and stronger and slowly develop more strength to lift heavier and heavier objects. With the mind, the brain, the thinking brain, it is the same. At first it's very difficult to maintain focus on the meditation object, but the more you keep attending your sitting, doing nothing gym of the brain, you exercise it and strengthen its ability to concentrate, sama samadhi, and have focus. And it's progressively, and as slowly as perhaps strengthening your muscles, getting towards the ability to stay focused on the meditation object. And if pulled away from it by some thought or physical feeling, to come back to it rather more readily, rather more easily, rather more naturally. But trying isn't the way. To allow it naturally is the way. And the way we develop this skill is through consistency. So don't back off of your diligent practice of an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening. Keep at it. It's the consistency that brings about, as in going to the gym with your body's muscles, it's the consistency that will bring about the results eventually. But we have to be patient. You can look back in the past and see how much easier it is now than when you first began, how much longer you stay on the meditation object now than when you first began, and that'll give you some encouragement and confidence. If that isn't the case, if it's the same and you've been meditating for a long time, then you're perhaps not keeping your attention on a single meditation object like the breath, which is quite frankly the best meditation object, because it's not only accessible at all times, it's present here and now in the body. It's bringing your conscious awareness into this present moment here and now. But you can also then use it when you finish meditating to keep mindfulness, practice mindfulness throughout all of your other daily activities. Therefore, samasati is being developed, right mindfulness, giving you the strength and basis for right samadhi, right meditation, samasamadhi, when you sit. And the same is reverse. The concentration practice gives you the benefit of more mindfulness throughout your daily activities. So it is a continuous effort, but right effort in that you don't try, you don't push yourself, you maintain that consistency. And this will bring about the results, just like going to the gym to strengthen your body. While practicing body scan, mind quickly gets distracted, really struggling to get hold of this. So don't struggle to get hold of it, don't bother with it at all. This is one of these things that's taught along with the way meditation is taught. It's kind of listing from the top of your head down to the soles of your feet, going through all of the parts of the body to give your mind something to do in meditation. It's too varied and complicated and thought-provoking a form, way or style of a meditation object. It is not a meditation object as considered in the 40 Kamatanas, meditation objects the Buddha refers to. Parts of the body, 32 parts of the body, and take one of them, the lungs, the liver, the skeleton or the sinews, the eye, these on their own are enough if you have to use such a meditation object. But why not just use the breath? Now, the good idea of body scanning is what one should always do when you first sit for meditation. And this is as far as body scanning has ever gone with me. I did try it for a long time initially, going from the top of the head, because the teachers teaching meditation were saying this, going through this in guided meditation, and I found it rather a waste of my meditation time. You must always be conscious. If you only are meditating for an hour, if you spend 10 minutes thinking about something, whatever it may be, even metta, you are wasting 10 minutes. Now, it's not necessarily wasting 10 minutes, but it's not 10 minutes that you're meditating. You can have metta, develop it as a quality throughout all of your day. You can scan your body throughout all of your day. You don't have to be sitting meditating to do that. But what you should do when you first sit is you just, after taking a few deep breaths and closing your eyes, notice where there might be something uncomfortable in your body that might cause you difficulty later on. Rather than scanning from the top of your head to the soles of your feet, and I'm doing this in reality now, just notice where you can feel something that might need a little adjustment in order that you don't become uncomfortable later on. So I'm sitting like this for my meditation now, with my ears in line with my shoulders in line with my elbows in line with my hips, and my hands, palms uppermost, relaxed gently on my lap. The thumbs are barely touching, but that's just to give some center, some placement of where my hands are so that they're not doing anything. They can relax fully, so that I can even feel the temperature of my palms, cool or warm, sweaty or dry. And at this point, after a few deep breaths, you'll notice there's something that might need to be moved. So let's say in my case, I might need to just move my head very slightly to the left and forward, thus. You see, that's a very slight adjustment. Without body scanning, I noticed a little pain developing in my shoulder blade that I know from experience originates from a pinched nerve in my 8th or 9th or 7th or 8th vertebrae. So I have to always, when meditate, make that slight adjustment. This is very slight and just enough. And I might also want to take my left foot and see a slightly more exaggerated move there, and just because I noticed a little tingling there where I wasn't quite sitting correctly, maybe cutting off something there, a pressure point that wasn't necessary. Having then adjusted that, you've done your body scanning. You've found in my situation there, 2 uncomfortable spots. You've adjusted just very slightly so that you can then sit for the rest of the session without needing to move. Taking some further deep breaths at this point, you can just reassess. That's body scanning done. That's all you need to do. Then just bring your conscious awareness to the breath. Know you've made the body feel as comfortable as it can be, and observe the breath. This is Anapanasati meditation, and really that's all I'm ever going to recommend. It's what the Buddha described as his own practice in the Anapanasati Sutta, and also the practice he was using when he attained to enlightenment. So teachers will go through this body scanning thing. Sometimes they'll have a list of things, metta, body scanning, and by the time you've done all that, that's 20 minutes of a 40-minute meditation gone. And because they like to have a little bit of a cool down at the end of the meditation, or warm down, whatever you call it, it only leaves 10 minutes actual samadhi, and then another 10 minutes of listing and talking about things or thinking about things. Just meditate when you sit to meditate. Get yourself physically able to, as I did, and then just meditate. It's just that. So anything that's not good or productive for you, leave it. Don't do it. Don't keep struggling with it. Never struggle in meditation. If you're struggling, it's not right for you. A lot of these things are designed as a sort of a pill for everybody, a cure for everybody. There's no such thing. We all need something slightly different. What I had to adjust in my body then is going to be completely different to what you might have to adjust in your body when you first sit to meditate, to enjoy samadhi. Can we observe the breath always? Well, that flowed on nicely as conversation goes. Yes, you can always be observing the breath. I try to always be observing the breath, even when I'm talking to people. So it's quite difficult, but it's giving you a center. It's bringing you back to the body. It's bringing you back to your meditation object. It's like an anchor. It doesn't mean you can't fully concentrate on everything you're doing and use it just to come back to. It's like home, like your home reset button, if there is such a thing. It's your comfort zone. So whatever's going on, if you start to get a little bit stressed, you start to breathe, come back to the breath. But yes, you can be observing the breath for as much as your circumstances and situation allow you to do so throughout your entire day, from the minute you wake up until the minute you go to sleep. And if you're doing that, then you're practicing mindfulness without even trying to be mindful, because it's mindfulness in itself. You're practicing mindfulness of the breath, which means you're actually also mindful of everything else that's going on around you. I will say, I should have mentioned back with that body scanning, going back a step here, forgive me if you're only looking at one question from the chapters, albeit they come very few months after each of these episodes, let's say, but anyway, it happens eventually. So with that body scanning, start with the face also. Once you've got rid of the major hot spots of discomfort, go to the face before you go to a meditation object and just say to yourself mentally, relax my face, like this, Relax, don't do that with your hands like I was, but relax your face, relax my face. And by that I mean, notice the tension around your eyes firstly, and relax, yes? And your jaw, your teeth should not be clenched, but your mouth should be closed. You're just observing the breath as you breathe in through your nose and out through your nose. And your lips are together. I'm talking, obviously, but your lips are together, but your teeth are not clenched, so your jaw is relaxed. And keep focus attention, rather than body scanning, on relaxing your jaw around your eyes. Now, if your face relaxes, your entire body will also relax. You can almost control all of your physical feelings from your face alone, just in the same way that your face alone expresses all of your bodily feelings. If someone is in pain, you can see it in their face. If they're concentrating, you can see it in their face. When actors are portraying an emotion on movies or television or something, I don't know this for sure, I'm guessing that they're trained to portray that physical pain or feeling through their facial expressions mainly, because you can't see that their knee is hurting. But if they mention their knee is hurting and their pain is showing in their face, you can almost experience that pain. So similarly, by way that the face expresses the pain, it can also, in reverse, by relaxing the face, alleviate the pain. How magic is that? Relax your face. This is just one of those first steps in meditation. I might call this video How to Meditate, because often people rightly ask that question. Newly coming to this channel whom aren't necessarily meditators, I refer to meditation as being so important. But it shouldn't be assumed that everybody understands what meditation is. So that is what it is. It is sitting and being comfortable, and the way we get comfortable, as I've just described, relax your face and then observe the breath. Now, if you can do that, you're really going to be off to a good start, a flying start towards practicing Anapanasati, mindfulness of the breath. And that will then continue throughout all of your daily activities with observation of the breath and mindfulness developing. I find that when I'm unwell, my mindfulness of speech goes terribly wrong. I am unable to catch my mind so easily. Any advice would be very much appreciated. Oh, I'd like some advice about that as well. I had some very significant tooth pain. Those offending teeth have now been removed, I'm very happy to say, but it is very difficult. Now, you know, the Buddha considers pain also to be an intoxicant. Now, I know you're referring to illness in general, which isn't always pain. You can just feel very under the weather, unwell, without direct pain in one place. But pain is an easier example to explain. Pain in itself, the Buddha describes, is an intoxicant, as also can be health. Physical fitness is an intoxicant. We can be intoxicated with being healthy and fit and having no pain, no suffering. But that is a different form of intoxicant than the actual intoxicant of pain, which makes it, yes, very difficult to be mindful. And right speech is perhaps one of the hardest things to adhere to in terms of the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, it's okay in terms of precepts. This is just the fourth precept. We must refrain from lying. But to speak kindly to people, to speak at the appropriate time, to speak usefully, to speak, usefully, truthfully, and from experience are okay. But to speak kindly to people when you're really suffering with a lot of pain is difficult. And it can manifest itself in all kinds of ways. You can sound angry when you don't mean to. You can be impatient when you don't mean to be. So I would suggest one tries to avoid situations when you're unwell and to be kind to yourself, look after yourself, take the medicine your body requires, and be alone. People might visit you to offer you assistance. If you're having to work and you're feeling unwell, avoid unnecessary conversation. Avoid perhaps subjects that might initiate conflict of any kind, any form of debate, argument, or even discussion to some extent. Just really practice what we refer to when living in monasteries or practicing as noble silence, if you can, if it's appropriate to do so, even in the workplace or with friends and family and socially. And never be ashamed or unwilling to explain. First and foremost, so you're feeling unwell. Say, I'm terribly sorry, I'm not very talkative today, but I don't feel very well. So often myself, I've thought, I wish I'd just explained to the person I'm trying to talk to that I'm in immense pain, rather than trying to explain what I want from them, which was to alleviate the pain, in what might have come out as a rather unkind or even aggressive way of speaking. If you say, I'm sorry, I'm in so much pain, then you can wait for the response, and I'm sure that people will want to help you. Or I'm really feeling unwell, people will want to help you. This is just generally mindfulness in itself. The more we practice, the more mindfulness we have, the easier this becomes. But when we're unwell, when we have pain, it's very easy to slip into old habits, old ways. So the advice I can give you is to be kind to yourself, look after yourself, but be patient with yourself. You might make mistakes. Don't admonish yourself too much. You can apologize even immediately afterwards. Say, oh, I'm sorry I spoke to you like that, but I'm in such agony. No one will be offended. Everybody will understand. And this is understandable, a good point for concern, but we are only human. We are in this realm, which is suffering. Now, there is an end of suffering, but we have to practice the Noble Eightfold Path to see that end of suffering. And sickness, aging, sickness and death, yes, are inevitable. But through the practice, we develop equanimity towards these deteriorations, towards this suffering, and are able to deal with it with more patience, calmness, and maintain mindfulness when speaking to others. But it takes practice. These skills don't come as a step-by-step. To some extent, the practice is step-by-step, but the skills have to grow and develop, like growing plants from seed. They have to have the right conditions, the right nutrients, the right care, continually whilst they grow and strengthen and become established. And this is the practice. It doesn't happen overnight, but you'll get better and better at it, and then see illness and see pain as a lesson. I know that's easy to say and harder to do by experience, but see this as a way of teaching you to, even in difficult situations, employ mindfulness as best you can. But be kind to yourself. Don't punish yourself if you're ill and you can't really keep focused on the breath or something like that. Would you recommend sleeping on the floor instead of a bed? I'm considering trying it out since I got a new bed, which is bigger, but that means I need to find a right size for the bed sheet, which is a hassle. So are you asking, should you sleep on the floor just to avoid buying sheets or something? I'm not sure. Just generally speaking, would I recommend sleeping on the floor instead of a bed? Well, personally, I sleep on the floor because I got used to that a long time ago. And beds are really, well, they're such a con, aren't they? You think of what a bed is and how much it costs, firstly. There's a lot of resources go in making a bed. What do you need? You need perhaps something maybe between you and the floor, and it can be even a very comfortable mattress. The rest of the bed paraphernalia that is underneath the bed is to keep it originally off the floor, away from perhaps insects or damp. So that's perhaps the next stage of what you need. But the rest of it is what an industry is made out of, the bedding industry, a huge worldwide industry. But then, where does this bed need to go? Into a bedroom. You need a whole room in a house for this bed to be. For most of its life, doing nothing except occupying a huge amount of space in a room, all of its own, which is part of a major complex of accommodation. Now, if you just sleep on the floor, you don't even need a room. You can sleep in any corner of any room. It doesn't matter where you sleep. So you develop a very valuable skill for a simple way of life. But it's not necessarily for everyone. Couples probably especially, but it's something you can just determine yourself. I was going to ordain one day, so I knew that bedding wouldn't be that comfortable, and the 8 precepts do refer to not having a high and luxurious sleeping place, or refraining from, but it really, in terms of keeping 8 precepts for lay people, applies to all soft furnishings. Sitting on the floor means we're awake and upright for our meditation. Sleeping on the floor means we don't laze around in bed too long. We tend less to oversleep. We tend to just sleep for the hours that are necessary, because there's not so much rolling over and going back to sleep. Once you're awake on a hard floor, you're awake. So it has its benefits, but it's not always suitable in the environment you live. Now, you've already acquired a new bed. Then I suppose, what are you going to do? Unacquire it, give it back, or go and get sheets for said bed? That is your own domestic issue to deal with. And as far as Buddhism is concerned, as a lay practitioner, it really doesn't matter much. But if you are aspiring to ordain in the future, then, well, I would have suggested not going and getting the new bed in the first place, because now you have additional problems, and that's illustrative of all of the problems one can associate with beds. I was amazed living in this little flat that I was living in before I left living in any place at all and became homeless intentionally for the benefit of my practice, but decided to live outside for many years. I had a tiny flat first. I got from a big house down to a tiny little one-roomed flat, not much bigger than this, I suppose, but it had a big double bed. I bought a big double bed, a big new double bed when I moved in, and it took up the whole room. And then when I gave it away to someone, I had this huge space like I have in here. You could do walking meditation diagonally from one corner to the other. I could sit anywhere to meditate. I could lay anywhere to sleep. I suddenly had this huge, vast mansion to live in, rather than what was a very pokey, tiny bedsit. So they even have properties called bedsits. That's how ridiculous beds are. Beds take up far too much importance in worldly life, and which is why it's actually quite an important precept to give wise consideration to, not glib consideration. You should be wise about this, because some people, it would take them a long time to get used to sleeping on anything less than quite a thick mattress. But saying that mattress usually can just be on a floor. Now, on a floor like this, living in a place like this, which can be quite damp and wet, a conventional mattress from what are we using terminology these days? West and East, I don't know. But from a mattress shop, doesn't want to go on the floor because it's going to get damp and mouldy and smelly, and it's going to not last very long at all. It needs to be raised up, doesn't it? And in good conditions. Another reason for not having such a thing. There are so many reasons not to have a bed and very few for having a bed. So, I mean, obviously I'm a proponent for no beds, and a living example. I don't think I've slept in a bed because I've had to stay in places where there have been beds, but I've just slept on the floor beside the bed. really because I'm used to that, and I don't think I'd be comfortable sleeping in the bed, or sitting on the bed even. I'm not that comfortable sitting on chairs. That's why I avoid a lot of functions in monasteries here, because they like to sit in chairs. But I like to sit on the floor. I like to sleep on the floor. And one could say that that's liking, that's preference, and that's the desire not to be in the bed and the desire not to sit on a chair. But you see, at least it's the common default towards simplicity. It's making life simpler and less burdensome on others. People don't have to supply me with bedding because I don't have a bed. They don't have to supply white cloths to put over my chairs because I don't have any chairs. So this is the nature of simplicity, and that's my practice of Buddhism. Anyway, I hope I've answered. Your domestic aspects of that question I'm not sure about, but you should perhaps get down to the shops. Okay. Someone has the bare bones practice. Well, I like the sound of that, yes. If it's the core practice of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, if that's bare bones, then that's good. Try spending most of the time to observe without judgment. When craving and thirst arise, as soon as I realize that, what I'm doing, I focus on my breathing, therefore occupying my mind with something else other than what I'm craving or thirsting for. I'm not exactly sure if that's the correct way to practice or what the Buddha taught, but that's just what I do. Well, I think what you do is very good and very concisely put as to the practice by way of a bare bones nature. And why practice anything else? Because that is what the Buddha taught. Anything else has just been added on later on, and to some extent bells and whistles, optional extras, accessories we don't need. The practice, I've just described it, is very simple. Your life can become very simple as a result of it, and as you experience yourself when craving arises, by just coming back to the breath, the mind is occupied with something else and the craving passes. So yes, you have got exactly the right form of practice there, but what is most important is it's working for you. Don't take what I say is the right sort, or what other teachers or what teachers tell you you should be doing. What works for you is what is important. What is the reason for filming yourself doing this? That referred to one of my having my meal a long time ago, and I had no idea what the reason for doing that was. Maybe I was bored that day and just had the camera there and thought, I'll film this and put it on YouTube. That's probably the honest answer. But it's not because I want to become a YouTube star or YouTuber or have any belief in the significance of that. But I think it was an opportunity for me to share with others at the time. I don't know how long ago it was. I think it was in the very beginning of making these videos. A part of what I did on a daily basis as a monk, living where I was living at the time in India there. And that was just one very short video which formed one of a collection that illustrated my daily routine. And I think if you go back to the oldest videos, you'll find it there somewhere, me sitting there eating a meal. That was the reason for doing that. No special reason at all. And I don't do that sort of thing anymore. Now I find that what people want me to share with them is really from my own experience, but it is only opinions. It's by no way authoritative, but my opinions and suggestions with the questions that you ask and the comments you make with regards to those. So that's more or less all I do now. And occasionally I might just talk, something like we would call a Dharma talk, but really my own reflections on the practice, changes in circumstances, what's going on in the world around me, well, the very small, intimate world around me, and sharing that with you rather than much by way of different videos here, there and everywhere. So, forgive me if you found it offensive or it seemed pointless. It probably was a little pointless at the time and probably not very good. I can't remember now. Probably getting on, I don't know, for 3 years ago. Next next Vasa, next Rains Retreat, next August-ish, July, August time, was when I started recording these little talks in 2022. So that'll be, yeah, coming up for 3 years that these videos have been on there. This channel has been there. And the reason for filming these, or to have continued filming these, is because I've had only positive reactions and considerable encouragement by way of all of your comments, encouraging words, kind acknowledgements in the comments section on this platform, and the many emails and the overwhelming support that I get from you all, your company, my Kalyanamita, noble friends on the path, in this practice, albeit for this just very compartmentalized and short part of my day, the 40 minutes or half an hour to an hour corresponding in the morning with my coffee, and then the 40 minutes to an hour talking to you by this means, is me in touch with you all, upasakas, upasakas, out there practicing along with me and giving me all the encouragement in the world by the way you're doing that and your support. So I'm grateful for that. I wouldn't continue making or talking to the camera like this, or this phone like this, and making these videos if it didn't seem that people appreciated it and wanted me to do that. So we'll just get on to the sleeping. This is probably the last comment for today, but as it's to do with sleeping, I better cover it. Why is sleeping too much not conducive to positive states of mind? Why does it create negative mind states? Oh, it's 3 questions this, but we'll go through them because there's quite a few still to get through, so it doesn't matter if we go on a bit longer. Well, what is sleeping? You're unconscious, you're not mindful. It's a waste of time, isn't it, if you do too much of it? If you sleep for 12 hours a day, that's half of your life gone. Wasted, isn't it? We have this wonderful opportunity to do all sorts of things. And if it's practicing this Noble Eightfold Path, it's the way towards freedom from suffering and liberation from rebirth. So a very wholesome, skillful way of living indeed. But if you're asleep, you're not doing that. Now, that's the main reason why sleeping is, there's nothing technically, morally, or physically necessarily wrong with sleeping too much, but it's a rather useless activity. People all need varying degrees of sleep, but most people don't need really any more than 8 hours sleep. Any more than that is probably too much. And you will become more lethargic, more lazy throughout the rest of your daily activities with too much sleep. This is the physical downside of too much sleep. You might not get sufficient exercise. You might be prone to put on weight if you sleep too much because your body's not active, your thinking brain is not active. Even if you think sleep is a great experience because you have wonderful dreams, this is just your brain's way of sorting itself out from the clutter of the day, the thinking of the day. It's not actually cognitively sorting anything out. It's not solving any problems. It's, in fact, if anything, it's creating more than it's uncreating, creating more concern for the dreams you remember, or the nightmares you remember are going to be cause for concern rather than having solved any problems. So in that respect, it doesn't have much by way of what you do need by way of sleep, is just the rejuvenating aspect of it. But meditation, samadhi in itself, can be far more restorative than sleep. So if we're practicing samadhi, we'll find we become used to and need less and less sleep. So the next question there, how does one know they're getting too much, too little, or enough sleep? So you wake up in the morning and you still feel late. How do you know? It's just logical, isn't it? If you want to sleep for 14 hours, I'd say if you don't know that that's sleeping too much, then what can I say? If you're tired in the day, yeah, you know you've had too little. if you keep dozing off to sleep, if you're finding it difficult to concentrate, you've had too little. If you've had too much, it's a little bit harder to gauge. Just take the guidelines, the normal guidelines. You probably can Google this question: how much should a person of your age, weight, sex, whatever, how much sleep do you need? I'm sure there's an app that will tell you if you can't work it out for yourself. And then, how can a layperson consider the question in their daily lives so as to create a mindful or beneficial relationship with their sleep? You can't be mindful in your sleep, so sleep as little as possible, and then you are getting rid of the time when you're not mindful. So you can only be mindful in your waking hours. So right up until the moment you go to sleep, be mindful of the breath, and make a determination to, as soon as you wake up, be mindful of the breath again. And the closer you can bring those mindfulness of the breath towards going to sleep and waking up, the most you've extended your mindfulness throughout the day to its fullest capacity. You just need to maintain that mindfulness for the rest of the day. Sleep is that. You switched off, you're unconscious, it's asleep. The word Buddha means awake, awakened one. Not sleep, asleep, or sleeping one. It just means awake, awakened one. This is what we're looking towards. So that's how the layperson considers the question in their daily lives. To be mindful of their daily lives, samasati, samasamadhi in their meditation. Get just the right amount of sleep for their bodies and their thinking brains needs. 6 to 8 hours is enough, if you want a definitive answer. And that's your 3 questions answered. I hope I respected them. And with regards to all of those comments and those questions and supportive and encouraging emojis, evangelis and notes that I receive here, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for all of that support, your continued support and encouragement in my own practice. I hope I can offer as much back to you as I get from you in that respect. And on that note, be happy and stay well until next time. Sukhi Hotu.